Do you have any pro-growth economic policies sitting around unused? Perhaps you're in charge of regulating the increasingly state-owned railways in this country. Maybe you're responsible for handing out fines when people are rude on the telly. Or perhaps you oversee the UK's famously efficient water industry. Maybe you're into bats and newts. If so, the Chancellor is relying on you to do some serious soul-searching, cut your own regulations, get yourself out of the way of the rest of us, and unleash some economy-boosting reforms. If my tone sounds a little cynical, well, that's because I am a little cynical. Actually, sceptical is a better word. Welcome to the Week in Business with me, Christian May, my reasonably snappy end-of-week review of the biggest stories shaping business and finance this week. Now, the Prime Minister began the week by declaring that he has full confidence in Rachel Reeves, which immediately put a question mark over her future. And she had to shake up her ministerial team midweek after the inevitable but inexplicably painfully drawn-out resignation of City Minister Tulip Siddiq following an international corruption row. But back to the government's quest for growth, and the Chancellor stepped up her campaign to get the nation's regulators to come up with pro-growth policies. And as I said, I am a little sceptical. I think it's entirely sensible to scrutinise regulators' mandates and mothball unnecessary or counterproductive regulations. Of course I do. In fact, I wish the government would go further than simply asking the regulators to regulate their regulatory remit. Now, she met the regulators of rail, roads, water, energy and broadcasting this week, and I would be surprised to learn if that particular meeting of minds unlocks the economy. The city's regulators, the FCA, PRA, Bank of England, CMA, FRP, they're all meeting the Chancellor next week, but before that they've been asked to respond to her call for regulatory reform ideas. Now, for example, the Financial Conduct Authority has said that it is prepared to, wait for it, consider lifting the £100 limit on contactless payments. And boom, the economy takes off. Now look, lifting the contactless payment limit is perfectly sensible, but just do it. Don't reach for it in response to government demands for bold ideas. And this is from the same FCA, by the way, that is currently tearing its way through the financial services sector with a retrospective review of motor finance deals from nearly 20 years ago. That's a regulatory crusade that, as one FTSE 100 CEO told me this week, is making Americans nervous about investing in the UK. Frankly, and with all due respect to the many fine folk who work in the city's regulators, they are not the ones that I would ask for advice on growing the economy. Instead, I would ask the businesses being regulated. They would tell you what needs to be done, or what needs to stop being done to them. I had breakfast this week with a bunch of fintech founders and investors, and the Chancellor should listen to them because they know what they're talking about. And ministers have also got themselves in the absurd position where we now expect the outcome of the regulator's growth audit to constitute a breakthrough rather than just a sensible review of their own rules. Now, in the absence of many other pro-growth ideas, in the absence of any actual growth, having tanked consumer and business confidence with that £40 billion tax raid, it feels like asking the nation's regulators to help out is the government's last roll of the dice. Now, of course, reviewing regulatory mandates is sensible. I'd like it to happen a whole lot more. But isn't it telling that the government isn't suggesting or identifying regulations that, in their view, need to go? Instead, they're sort of just outsourcing it. Bring me some growth, the sooner the better. This is an edict, not a strategy. Now, to be fair to the government, they are trying to lay the groundwork for future growth in AI, in planning reform, in infrastructure, all sensible stuff. But what good is that if their more immediate policies are leading to stagnation, maybe even recession in the here and now? Choking off growth now, while hoping it arrives in the future, is pretty high risk. And it only serves to confirm the idea rapidly gaining ground in Westminster that there is no plan. And it will take more than some blue sky thinking by the nation's regulators to reverse that perception. Well, let's end on a high, literally, as the FTSE 100 hit an all-time high on Friday morning, driven by strong gains in the industrial sector, a weaker pound, which helps overseas earnings, and expectations of a rate cut in the UK next month. Well, that's it from me. Now, do stay up to date and in the know across the weekend with the City AM app, and we will see you back here next week. Have a good weekend.